Hi guys, so because I didn't do a November wrap up, I thought that I would sit down and do a what I read recently video today because I've read some really good books that I just want to talk about. I want to be able to sit down and rave about how good they are. So I thought I would just, sit and talk to you today about books because that's what I like best. I'm going to have proper formal reviews of these on my blog, queenofcontemporary.com, if you didn't know, closer to publication, so I'll leave all the links when those reviews are available. But I'm going to jump right into it now, and the first book I want to talk to you about is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo, and I recently fell head over heels in love with this book. It's now my favourite thing ever and I am majorly obsessed with it. Six of Crows is about a gang of criminals who all get together to perform a really impossible heist, and it's also got fantasy aspects thrown into it because it's set in Leigh Bardugo's Grisha universe, which is this group of fantasy characters with special powers, and it's all set in this one world which is called the Grishaverse. And I had previously read Shadow and Bone, I think about 3 years ago, but I didn't enjoy it that much, and so I was a bit reluctant to read Six of Crows, but everybody I know has been talking about it and raving about how amazing it is, so I thought it was finally time that I picked up a copy for myself because I was really intrigued by it, because I love characters who are bad and who shouldn't be characters that you like, but you do and you just fall in love with them even though they're actually bad people. Like, they are not morally correct in many ways, but they have redeeming qualities. I really find characters like that interesting, and I actually really liked them because of it, because they were so interesting. And what Leigh Bardugo does best is create backstories for them that just make you want to know everything about them and be them. It's told in third person, which I really like because you get to see all of the characters, and one minute it will follow one and one minute it will follow the other, and it kind of all connects this bigger story together in a bigger picture. My favourite character in here was definitely Nina. I fell in love with her. I would like to marry Nina Zenik, okay? I just loved her. I also loved, I don't know how to say her name, but Ine, that is one bad thing about this book. The only bad thing is that the characters have really hard names to pronounce. Seriously hard. In my head, I was just kind of mashing it all together. So for Inej, I was so like, I just didn't know how to pronounce her name. They are very fantasy-based names. It was so action-packed and I could not put it down. I read it in the space of a few days, and it also has a gorgeous map inside of it, and it's just so beautifully designed, and the cover is gorgeous. I just don't know why you wouldn't want to read this book. I wish I'd read it sooner, but it does mean that the sequel, Crooked Kingdom, is out now, so I can read it straight away, and I just want to devour it, but I also don't want to finish the duology. So I've got a bit of a dilemma there. But I think that after I've read the 2 books in this duology, then I will go back and read the original trilogy and see if I like it better a second time round. Another book I want to talk to you about is one that comes out at the start of February, and it is Unconventional by Maggie Harcourt. Oh my gosh, this was the UK YA contemporary I have always wanted. It is set in a comic convention, a bit like Comic-Con or MCM, and it is the best thing I've read in ages, one of the best contemporaries I've read all year, and it's going to be the book that I recommend non-stop next year. The main character in Unconventional is called Lexi Angelo, and her dad is the one who runs this comic convention, and she takes on all this responsibility for doing the everyday stuff that it takes to run it, even though she's a teenager. And I didn't know if that would work, but it does, because it was very realistic. I felt like Lexi was a real person. I felt really close to her, which I like. And so Lexi runs these comic conventions with her dad. They are huge. It is just like Comic-Con. So if you've ever been to Comic-Con, you will love this. One day she gets handed a proof of a book and she falls in love with it. But there's also this guy at the comic conventions that is just so annoying, and she's like, why are you turning up? Why are you doing everything wrong? And it turns out that he is the one who wrote this amazing book series, this world-class fantasy series of books that I just want to read now after reading this. So as you can probably imagine, Lexi and Angelo kind of hit it off. It is told over the course of I think a year's worth of comic conventions, and I got caught up in all the atmosphere of it. I like comic conventions, but I find them quite overwhelming. It just made me want to be transported to there as soon as I was reading it, and I read this in a day because I was addicted to it. I could not put it down. And I mean that literally. I was finding every spare second I could to read this book. Plus, there are some awesome real life cameos in here by some of my favourite authors. So you just have to read it for them, to be honest, because that was amazing. Now I want to talk to you about one of the best conclusions to a trilogy I've ever read, and it is Mafiosa by Catherine Doyle. I absolutely adore these books, and I'm going to be doing a full review of the whole trilogy sometime in January, so keep an eye out for that because I want to talk about these books all day. But like I said, this was the final book in the Blood for Blood trilogy. The first one was Vendetta, the second one Inferno, and now Mafiosa. This one comes out in January and it's gonna be amazing. If you haven't read the first two books already, this is your opportunity now to go and read them before Mafiosa is released, because you will want to read it straight away, I promise you. To sum up the trilogy, it's basically about these mafia families and the conflict between them, and the main character Sophie is caught up in this mafia world that she never ever expected to happen. And I think my favourite thing about these books is that you feel like you're watching them. It doesn't feel like you're reading a book, it feels like you're watching the best kind of action-packed thriller film ever. You just get caught up in all the drama, you want to know what's happening, the characters are all over the place and you're not sure if you should like them or not, just like Sophie is. So you kind of get conflicted just as she is, and there are so many twists and turns, and I was so satisfied by this. I know that sometimes when you finish a trilogy or a series you can think, oh well, that didn't end how I wanted it to end, and this ended just as I wanted it to end, but I also didn't think it would end that way, and that was nice because it wasn't expected. So I would highly recommend Mafiosa and the whole Blood for Blood trilogy because Catherine Doyle is amazing. She creates brilliant stories and she's a brilliant writer. It's so believable. You feel like you are caught up in Chicago and all this mafia drama, and I kind of want to know how she researched it, to be honest, because it feels very realistic. And the final book I want to talk to you about that I've read recently is Persuasion by Jane Austen, who is my babe. I love Jane Austen. I've talked about her quite a bit, and this was one of the books that I wanted to read this year towards the 2016 Classics Challenge, and I got in right at the end, which I'm very pleased about because I really adored Persuasion. But the problem I'm having with Jane Austen now is that the more I read of her books, the harder it becomes to decide my favourite, because I love them all equally but in very different ways. Persuasion is about a woman called Anne Elliot who turns down her lover Captain Wentworth years ago, and then he comes back into her life, and it's all about family ties and romance and your commitment to your family. And also Anne Elliot is a really interesting character because she's not the most interesting of Jane Austen's protagonists, but I liked her because of that, because not every character has to have an amazing adventure or go on an amazing journey. Anne Elliot just goes along with things, and that really works with the plot. I think this would be a good place to start if you haven't read any Jane Austen yet, because it was quite easy to read and it's fairly well known as well, so there are a lot of adaptations and stuff about. And also I have the Clothbound Classics edition, which comes with really good detailed notes and a really good introduction too, so I would recommend this edition. So those are just a few of the books that I have read recently. Keep an eye out for the full reviews, which will be up on my blog soon, and let me know in the comments what you've been reading recently. Happy reading!